How did Tayzzyronth meet their end? What happened to Ena? Why did Xipe suddenly appear? And what is motivating Aha to do all the things that they did? Welcome to part 3, where I answer these questions as best I can in the conclusion of the Swarm Disaster Ember universe. We finished the Swarm universe with the Nameless accidentally sending the Gondola straight towards the Elation star zone. We immediately resumed this narrative with the first entries in the Ember universe. Gondola Helping Gods Part 6 places us beside Crown Guy with his crooked ankles as he gazes upon us before the powerful hammering, whimpers, and indecipherable words begin. He claims to have been alone in dialogue with the past for a long time, and that no traveller had ever stepped foot here. He would be interrupted by sudden flashes of his memory and temporarily stop talking before raising his head to recollect his train of thought. He hands you a cloth written full of words, left behind by the navigator who loves poems, the one that he had recruited to remind him of the prophecies every 3 days. Putting the pieces back together tells us of a worm who let out a bellowing laugh that had once rubbed shoulders with countless people. A soldier who'd been trying to kill himself, a self-annihilator, thus gains joy, which in turn becomes the desire to live. This is more evidence that the recordings he was following were left behind by Aha to manipulate him. The joy that a mere single worm can spread is limited and always fluctuating, diluting, and coalescing in 3 days. This implies that the worm might have been the cause of his 3-day memory troubles. It's not clear what kind of worm this is, but during the Origin universe he was stroking a worm that was part of the swarm. There is also the Noblesse worm that Aha used and empowered only to see if it could join the Genius Society, and the Sweet Saliva worm that rewards us with happy spitting if we give it appropriate gifts. If we decide to calm him down first, we stroke his arced back with our hand and notice that this should be the land of Tayzzyronth's fated beginning and end. But there is only desolation here. Just then the self-annihilator stretches out his hand, gulping as if to keep some temptation at bay, and on the 4th day, when his memories have reset without the knowledge of the prophecy, he finally remembers the annihilation of the self. Gondola Helping Gods Part 3 resumes the adventures of the Gondola. After several amber errors, it finally arrives at its destination, the realm of Elation. Some passengers dance in celebration and the morning actors cry from happiness. Someone on the path of elation, likely the masked fools aboard, burns the gondola, as they have vowed to dedicate their lives to the war among the aeons, as was requested by Aha previously. We wait for an eternity, then realize that, even though we've arrived at the correct place, Aha has found a way to deceive us all. At the same time is Lepismat Massacre Saga Part 6. The gondola passengers, guided by Aha, reach Elation and encounter Crown Guy. Crown Guy glares at the memory bubble containing a shade of nihility and reaches for it. At that moment, an amalgamation of sound emanates from all corners of the sky. It is the laughter of Aha, the whimper of Tayzzyronth, and the hymns of Ena. The rhythm causes everyone except you to fall into a state of ecstasy, as if experiencing divine revelations. They follow the rhythm and pound on the memory bubble until it cracks and reveals the shadow of nihility. Crown Guy, who'd been smiling from the noises, abruptly becomes anguished. He embraces the shadow of nihility and is consumed, vanishing instantly. The shadow is described as the back of an entire world. This is the lost self that Crown Guy had been searching for this entire time. He merges with it and dissipates in the blink of an eye. This process sounds similar to Acheron, who holds the power of her own world merged into one. The arbitrators of equilibrium act. There is a resounding boom, the shadow of nihility fades, and the eerie sounds coming from the aeons dissipate. At last, the restless swarm throughout the universe begins to calm down. The eerie sounds are explained in Preservation 2. We encounter Qlipoth. They're doing something, but we're not sure what, and are trying to get closer. We can't see, but we can listen to what is happening. Qlipoth's hammer falls, and his target's whimpering shakes the earth. From the sound, we can hear subtle laughter of Aha, and a symphony of numerous sounds, the hymns arranged in parallel from Massacre 6. There are more than 3 voices here, confirming there are more than just Qlipoth, Tayzzyronth, and Aha present. The propagation is being diluted by Qlipoth, but diluted in what exactly? More forces, violent and calm, join in to disintegrate Tayzzyronth. The suns burn abnormally at a higher temperature, and Qlipoth's hammer has conjured up a storm of rage. Eggs escape but immediately die, and the ground is covered in colourful fluid. Tayzzyronth's glow wanes beneath the bluish-green moon. They seem to be falling, a callback to their introduction in the Order chapter. We follow the storm conjured and come into contact with the tattered white cloth, and several puzzle pieces swaying in the wind. Under the blazing sun, the blurry figure resembles a massive and silent statue. Under immense pressure, we cannot get close to them, only kneel in silence. We realize this is the moment, and we can only capture the slightest fluttering of the symbols when they are spilled into the realm of reality like spectres. Mortals simply cannot discern or comprehend the language of gods. They can't even distinguish the sound of a god's hammer and whimpering. I have a theory about these events. This entire scene describes the creation of Xipe, the triple-faced god. Trinity gods are common globally, and Xipe's face gives them away in this respect. Trinity gods are almost always three different deities mixed into one super deity. Christianity has the Trinity of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. There's also the Triple Moon Goddess consisting of the Maiden Mother and Crone, and the Trimurti and Tridevi of Hinduism, and many more. For this reason, I believe Tayzzyronth is being diluted by mixing them with Ena, and likely one more entity. Aha watches as Qlipoth does this. It's all part of their plan. The tattered white cloth is likely what remained of Ena, which was assimilated into Xipe. The real-life Aztec Xipe wears the flesh of their flayed sacrificial victims. Their skin is made up of these victims, much like Xipe's puzzle pieces. I believe this may have been done so that the power of Order can suppress the loneliness of Tayzzyronth, and this loneliness is redirected towards a relentless pursuit of togetherness, rather than reproduction. I'm following this up immediately with Elation II, though it's likely a short while later. We meet Aha again, and they bring up the playball thing, referring to the one-sided die that they wanted us to use to defeat Tayzzyronth. This is immediately followed by the arrival of Xipe, and Aha tells us to salute the Great One. Xipe, like Ena, soothes emotions as we navigate through their puzzle pieces and the multiple facets of ideologies and modernity. You believe you are in their arms and have become one of their children of united wills. They speak with three different colours, playing into the triple head thing again. They state that they thought Akavili was dead and missing. We make a comment on how they have many faces and seem to fall further into the harmony. Aha begins complimenting Xipe, calling them the mother of all stars. Then they continue on and bring up something interesting. They say, "We were still negotiating last time, but this time Ena already became you. It's a shame, my friend, but I must say, Ena makes you look even better." This line is particularly suspicious for three reasons. Firstly, Aha is talking to someone who is not Ena, but whom they had previous discussions with prior. Secondly, these discussions anticipated Ena becoming part of Xipe, and it's a shame that it has already happened. Thirdly, in addition to all the compliments that Aha has already given to Xipe, they add that Ena makes Xipe look even better. This brings me back to the topic of Xipe being a Trinity god, and you might have noticed that I only mentioned two components previously, Ena and Tayzzyronth. This is where I introduce who I think is the most likely candidate for the third face. None other than the missing aeon of beauty, Idrila. Whoa, what does Idrila have to do with this story? Well, honestly, I don't really know. We have so little information on Idrila that it would be nearly impossible to hypothesize what they could have been doing at this point in the story, though I do have some suspicious details that led me to them nonetheless. Shout out to my lore friends, especially Stella, for theorizing this with me over the last few months. I don't want to spend forever discussing this, so I'll list them quickly. There is an entity in the Argenti light cone that is implied to be Idrila, who has similar hair to Xipe. Idrila's motifs are the roses, mirrors, and candles that can be seen in multiple places related to Penacony. Argenti's armor also features wings that are very similar to a swan or angel, invoking imagery of Valkyries, who are equated with angels in Honkai and Genshin lore. Argenti's ultimate takes place in a church with a bell, continuing the Christian themes. Romantic knights usually have Christian associations through medieval European traditions too. Argenti's whole introductory quest was directly connected to the Swarm, implying a possible narrative connection between Idrila and Tayzzyronth. There are Idrila followers that can be found on Penacony who are into music. There's a Penacony readable about the Clocky cartoon that mentions a character known as the Mirror Princess, who is strongly implied to be Idrila and who is inspired by Disney princesses. In this story, the Mirror Princess fights a laughing mist who trips her, causing her to shatter into many shards, just like Idrila, and yet she continues to guard Dreamville with her radiant glow. And did I mention she's described as having a melodious voice reminiscent of a song even more beautiful than the birds a cappella? And last but not least, the very concept of creating a paradise that is perfect for everyone is quite reminiscent of the way that Idrila is supposed to be beautiful to everyone. Both concepts seem like theoretically impossible feats, yet both Xipe and Idrila strive towards them regardless. This is definitely in the realm of a crack theory and should be taken with a hefty grain of salt, but I don't yet have a better candidate for the third face. Moving on, we have Dwindling of Stars Part 6, which is a very suspicious interaction with the simulated universe that makes it seem like it is intentionally obscuring details on what happened to Oroboros. I don't have much to say, just note that this is very likely a result of tampering. Sand King Part 3 is a strange story from the point of view of a planet that was victim to the swarm. Their sky had been entirely blacked out, like many planets were, but eventually the darkness lifted, and the light of dawn broke through. Everyone celebrates for 18 natural days and nights, but it occurs to you that the daylight has persisted for far too long. In the city ruins, some people are clinging to the past by trying to hide in a stone closet. This closet is presumably how they survived the swarm. At the moment, I'm not entirely sure what significance this story has, but if it becomes apparent later, I'll write a comment about it. The Beyond the Sky Choir story concludes in Part 3. Countless worlds untouched by Qlipoth's graces, likely a description for the worlds controlled by Ena, recorded when the light of order faded like the radiance of old empires. Their suns had once disappeared, and a statue of an entangled pair of twins appeared in the sky, like an omen of a coming long night. This statue is very likely the pair of twins from the previous choir story that embraced as the Oroboros flooded them in remembrance too. Equilibrium returns the sun. The implication here is that the suns disappeared when Ena did, and were likely used by Qlipoth when diluting Tayzzyronth. It states that everything was for equilibrium, suggesting that Aha might work for equilibrium. The dialogue options imply that the path of preservation supports equilibrium, but the hunt does not. In Abundance 2, Herta and Skrullum resolve their bet with the conclusion that Yausha played no role in the creation of the swarm, because they hadn't appeared at all yet. We feel wheat wrap around our ribs and try to run our body through, yet the pain is healed, and one by one the journeys of many Pathstriders surface, and are located inside a perpetual and vibrant ecological cycle. Note here that the wheat is Yausha's tool. We open our eyes and find ourselves standing outside a fortress wall, one likely built by Qlipoth's architects. It is a nation where the sun has been stolen, and the believers who have lost their god will wake up from slumber. The believers who have lost their god are the followers of Ena, likely the members of the choir, and this is likely the location where the Beyond the Sky choir events took place with the twins. They include your portrait, the portrait of the trailblaze in the murals. They question you, and they beseech you for help. They long for you to give an answer from the trailblaze about where their god went. You have to answer them, and you are their savior. In this moment, you understand the compassion of Yausha. We ask the simulated universe about the Order disappearing, and it responds that after the disappearance of the Order, the equilibrium will return the sun, just like how the swarm never went extinct even after the swarm disaster had receded. This is interesting because it suggests that the enhanced sun used by Qlipoth to dilute Tayzzyronth were Ena's, or at least they were the suns that supported Ena's kingdoms. Based on this and the Beyond the Sky choir conclusion, I think that for some reason, the creation and destruction of Tayzzyronth was important for universal equilibrium. In the end, Tayzzyronth's existence ultimately served to repel the Oroboros, which was the main goal of Qlipoth, who appears to be working with Aha and Hu. Next is Sand King Part 5. It tells us about how Ilothia was ruined in the wake of the apocalypse, and the citizens were in dire need of psychological aid. The path of abundance is to aid the survivors in this recovery without any promise of payment, and at risk of hurting yourself. Coupled with the previous Yausha interaction, it seems that Yausha likely came to exist in the recovery period of the swarm disaster. A universe that had had 2/3 of existence decimated by the swarm and Oroboros was in dire need of someone to return life to it, though we know the abundance as being too much from the Xianzhou perspective, This ravaged universe would be greatly appreciative of the path at this point. It's easy to imagine how someone very compassionate may have ascended around this time from relentless charity, a love of life, and a deep mourning for those who died in the swarm disaster. The other interaction details how a councilman to the 14th Emperor, presumably of Eleuthia, makes up stories to document the miraculous end of the swarm disaster. They come up with 12 different stories, which eventually become tools for divination, perhaps something like the 12 zodiacs. Curiously, this is history fictionologist behavior and reminds us that we should not trust the documented history provided by anyone, regardless of how old it appears to be. The Hunt 1 confirms Lan to not exist in this time period. Lan will be born thousands of years from now. While praying to meet Lan, we have an experience described as chaotic and delusional. We meet a blue-skinned historian, and our long-accumulated desire for a swifter belief of the hunt overpowers our other impulses, and we quickly absorb numerous paintings, their petals changing colours like the cross-sections of spring. The imaginary kingdom grows stronger in the accelerated flow of time. Our hunt for knowledge stops at the craziest painting of a gondola in odd colours, likely the same gondola that belonged to the morning actors. In the boundary of the virtual and the real, you feel the urge to sacrifice yourself in return for the truth behind the fall of the propagation. This is interesting, noting how much sacrifice took place in the story by the Beyond the Sky Choir and by Ena, who likely volunteered themselves to be transmuted by Qlipoth. Self-sacrifice is a strong Christian theme, especially surrounding the story of Jesus. The real-life Xipe deity, also, is the recipient of sacrifices. Asking why Tayzzyronth had to die reveals that it was about the expansion of concepts, and that their descendants had gobbled up too much food. They had disrupted the order of the universe, threatened the equilibrium, and blocked the way of the trailblaze. Keep in mind that we don't know if this is a trustworthy library or a history fictionologist library, but assuming it is real, this suggests that the equilibrium only got involved once Tayzzyronth had devoured too much. More abstractly, there's also the possibility of this being orchestrated as part of the samsara cycle. Remember that the memories of Melchias in the Origin universe suggest that there was another swarm disaster that was separate from the one lived by Melchizedek. It's possible that the contained bugs of Lepismat were part of a samsara, potentially even people that had been turned into bugs long ago, and for some reason these bugs were still a threat, prompting Equilibrium, Aha, and potentially Ena to act on it. Though I'm not convinced that Ena was involved in that plan, considering their panic to seek out Qlipoth and the efforts they put in to attempt to save planets. The bugs might have even been stored there from a previous samsara in preparation for the next defense against Oroboros, who is known to attack periodically. It can't be a coincidence that the swarm started just in time to fight them off, right? But this is all hypothetical and doesn't have that much supporting it yet. Asking why Tayzzyronth was born brings up a blank page. Any excuse can be written here arbitrarily, affirming that the end of the swarm determines the beginning. It's never mattered who became Tayzzyronth, just that Tayzzyronth existed. In the end, Tayzzyronth's impact resulted in 3 major events: the decimation of 2/3 of the universe, the preoccupation of Oroboros, and the transmutation of Xipe. The concept of reverse chronology does imply finality is involved, and it reminds us of the very beginning when we encounter the genius murdered by Polka Kakamond, who leaves behind a manuscript written by an Omen vanguard of finality. This book seems to contain similar information, so they're either both right or suspicious. Interestingly, it ends with the line, "These are their sins." This invites more Christian imagery. Don't forget that the biblical swarm was sent as a punishment to the Egyptians and that humans had something called original sin, acquired by eating the fruit of knowledge, at the prompting of the serpent in the Garden of Eden. Humans born with original sin were forbidden entrance to heaven until the self-sacrifice of Jesus cleansed humanity once again. This is why Jesus is said to have died for our sins. It follows that sacrifice to absolve oneself of a self-inflicted generational sin plays such a core and recurring role in the story of Ena and the Beyond the Sky Choir. This imagery is continued in Sunday, who bears the crucifix all over his outfit and is covered in thorns, including on his halo. Jesus is known to have worn a crown of thorns as he was crucified. When he died on a Friday, he was resurrected 3 days later on a Sunday. On the topic of his design, I think the purple color represents the Lent period, which is 40 days leading up to the resurrection of Jesus, where some Christians choose to abstain from certain luxuries or pleasures, just as Jesus fasted for 40 days. This Lent period is represented by the color purple, and practicing churches will often change the decorations to reflect that. In Lepismat Massacre Part 3, after the destruction, a group of sin-thirsters emerge from the void, feeding on the sense of guilt. The void here should be the nihility. They appear fleetingly and dance around in jubilation, having gained a new lease on life. They represent the souls of the deceased, the swarm that has died and been reborn, and the civilizations that have been destroyed and reconstructed. This is interesting because it implies that the souls were taken to the void when they died, probably after being swallowed by the Oroboros when they returned to the sea. As a sin-thirster shifts and transforms like smoke, it eventually takes on a hunched human-like form. When it lingers near you detect both an alluring fragrance and the scent of blood. This smell is the same from the war between the bugs, who smell floral, and the soldiers. Doesn't it know it's just a mass of gas? We have the option to eat it or tell it its name from when it was alive. I'm reminded of the misty entities that appeared on Acheron's home planet, but I can't confirm if they're in fact the same type of beings or not. Telling it its name agitates it. It alters its appearance and introduces itself in silence as a soldier imbued with joy, and a self-annihilator who has forgotten how to erase itself from existence. This is implied to be what became of Crown Guy in the end. Next is Bounty Hunter Part 6. Rumors abound that the bounty hunters who participated in the massacre on Lepismat have been washing multicolored blood, the blood of the swarm, from their hands ever since. However, they are never able to cleanse their hands, nor can they distinguish whether they have exterminated aliens or their own compatriots. Then, in Bounty Hunter Part 3, we are followed by a bounty hunter sin-thirster. We gradually grow annoyed by the presence of this talkative entity. It begs us not to look at it as it rubs its hands using various changing languages. It stops talking, then begs us to wash its hands for the 9,087th time. When we turn around, there's nothing behind us. Still, its words persist, and it claims that the chart compilation game, mentioned by the bounty hunter leader as their excuse for going to Lepismat, has reached a point where the line between humans and insects has become blurred. Visions haunt the hunters and the swarms alike at night, making it difficult to distinguish friend from foe. Inevitably, hunters started killing each other until the hunter's beloved confessed to using insect dust witchcraft and urged him to end her life. We wave our hands dispelling the words, peace at last. On the topic of sin-thirsters, I think these may be the entities shown in the light cone solitary healing. Note that the model of Tayzzyronth features arms with only 4 fingers, seen also in Black Swan's ultimate card. These same fingers are shown in this light cone. The description is also quite ominous. Things moulded by the hands of secrecy are shapeless and incorporeal. In the totality of emptiness there exists a sudden dreaming. Those that court destruction will reap ruinous fruit, while those that clamour to live will survive. That which is extinguished may yet spark, and that which has dried may yet be filled anew. In compassion for the salvation of chaos, the elixir nurtures the shadows. With back face to the darkness between the stars, the encapsulation of this vessel can only be done in vain. Paradoxical these knowings are, in them shine the fullness of our pride. I can't help but think this compassionate entity might be Yaosha, and the hands are that of the ruined swarm and soldiers reaching for their elixir. This is a light cone for the path of nihility, and the sin seekers come from the void. It is also called solitary healing, invoking the image of a lone wandering healer, providing some semblance of hope among the ruined universe full of wispy sin-thirsters. Next is Architects Part 3, where we're catching back up with the lazy Bigfoot architect whose wife left him to join the Gondola during the swarm. We pass by his wall and see a sturdy statue before the city, except it's breathing. His body is old and massive like a wall, his whiskers grown long as time itself. Travellers passing by thought of setting his beard on fire to help clean him up, but he always declines the help. He sees you, Akavili, and recognizes you as a familiar friend. His eyes shimmer with a faint ripple of shock, but, as an ancient wall statue, he is already too decrepit to move his feet anywhere. He says, Outsider, I've been waiting for you. The Trailblaze, I know you. 3 times I've met you. The Trailblaze can traverse the stars for eternity. If you happen to meet her, his wife, could I ask you to help me tell her not to go? Regardless of choice, you bid him farewell and make for the distant stars with his love in tow. He stays there. His language is one of an ancient wail. No one knows better than him that, in a sea of wild embers, waiting takes far longer than immortality itself. In Dwindling Part 3, we have a precursor to the events of Golden Gears. At that time, the ancestors of the Intellitrons of Golconda were immersed in the infrastructure of the mechanical planetary system, completely unaware of the crisis faced by organic beings. Their ignorance lays the foundation for the countless irreconcilable contradictions that would arise between inorganic and organic life in the future. Endless wars raged in the vast sandbox of the universe. The depth crawler mentioned here is the one that we met during the Swarm universe. The disappearance of catastrophes, likely referring to the disappearance of Oroboros, is always silent. Its beginning and end at such a dazzling speed that no one can interfere. No one has ever foreseen it, or received any divine revelation. This is curious because an Oroboros is a cyclical symbol known for having the end point the same as the origin point. This is a recurring theme used by Hoyoverse and is directly referenced in Honkai Impact 3rd. It's a core part of the way they depict samsara cycles, and what they mean when they say that the end, or finality, is also the point of origin. When they say here that no one has foreseen it, or received any divine revelation, it brings into question how Qlipoth knew that the Oroboros was about to attack. After all, they warned the architects well in advance. Perhaps the Oroboros attacks at specific time intervals, or when some other condition is met, similar to how the Honkai ramps up in Honkai Impact 3rd based on the technological advancements of the planets, serving as a final test, that final Gnostic Leviathan that needs to be overcome before humanity can escape the confines of their fake reality. The ending of the Swarm Disaster event has us consolidate the information gathered with the geniuses. During the first plane, Herder confirms that the Swarm Disaster involved multiple aeons, and poses the first of 3 major points of suspicion. Tayzzyronth's birth may have been a coincidence, but the Lepismat star system's destruction most certainly wasn't a natural occurrence. She mentions how all of the factions came together at once and exploded in a fortuitous point of fate. Don't forget that this is a textbook description of what Aha specializes in. So, the answer to this question should be that it was all planned by Aha, and potentially influenced by Equilibrium and or Qlipoth. The second plane is during the Swarm Disaster, and we discuss the war between Tayzzyronth and Oroboros. They question the nature of Oroboros' hunger. They mention that after the arrival of Oroboros, Ena and Qlipoth crossed paths. Herta brings up the second point of suspicion. Oroboros and Ena vanished in the middle of this tale. We already know that at this point. I think Qlipoth used Ena and Tayzzyronth as ingredients to make Xipe, as Aha watched. I think Oroboros simply returned to the sea based on the memory of Fuli, with the beast leaping away with a splash. In the third plane, we have the finale. Aha actually joins in here and says that they, Aha of the Elation, certainly went ham on their antics. They confess they were the one who got everybody riled up. But did they truly care about any of this? Alas, a pity on the efforts of those generations of people on the Gondola. They thought they could help the gods. All Aha sees is the futility of mortal acts. Then again, people work in vain, yet revel in their efforts. What of it then? Note that Aha has always tried to be intentionally confusing. There is more information on Xipe here, and the SU described how everyone clamoured for their blessing. The family spread their songs to all the corners of the world and unites all wills as one. Curiously, Ron May points out how the equilibrium appears to have always been present alongside signs of the elation and harmony, and that they were present throughout everything, creating subtle traces evident when the scales of balance tip. This further suggests that equilibrium was working with Aha, and that the creation of Xipe was part of their shared agenda. We're reminded that Akavili was part of this story. In that vast desert, a robe is lifted by a sweeping wind, their figure faintly visible. You have a vague sense of being one with them, or perhaps it's just your delusion. Their light of trailblaze shines in the moment the divine fell. This heavily suggests that the one-sided die that Aha presented us was a real thing, and that Akavili really did help Aha, intentionally or not, to defeat Tayzzyronth. It's unclear if Akavili really did play all the roles that the Trailblazer did during the simulated universe or not, but we do know that Akavili was on the Gondola with the giant architect's wife. It's hard to comment too much on this at the moment, but it is mentioned that Tayzzyronth was threatening the path of the Trailblaze, which may have prompted Akavili to cooperate in securing their end. Herta mentions the third and final point of suspicion. If Tayzzyronth did indeed fall according to all observations and evidence, why are there still endless swarm offsprings roaming around the universe? What exactly is the root of the path of propagation? Now, you know I already suspect that Tayzzyronth is one of the 3 heads of Xipe, which would explain how some of the followers continue to exist, just like how the choir continues to exist informally as the family. It's a hard question to answer with any certainty, but it does lead into the story with Ran Mei, where we find out that she's actually trying to create emanators of propagation. I believe this to be something that will be explored in depth in the future. And with that, we've officially concluded the story of the Simulated Universe Swarm Disaster. I do plan to continue the Simulated Universe lore series by jumping straight into the Golden Gears introduction. I don't know if it'll be my next video because there are a few other little topics I want to cover quickly, and honestly there's still a lot of preparation that I have to do. Regardless, hopefully I can get that done as soon as possible. But anyway, if you've come this far and you've enjoyed this series so far, please do consider leaving a like because it really does help me out with the algorithm. In the meantime, I look forward to your comments. Do you agree with my theories? Do you disagree with my theories? And if you do, why is that? I'd love to hear it. But anyway, I really hope you enjoyed, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Bye!